We will let you get started. I think you're doing
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to tonight's speaker series. My name is Lee Moss. I am a current member of the Alumni Association board at GDB. I'm the board secretary, and I'm from Austin, Texas, and my guide is Aviva. I'm really excited tonight to have with us here Amy Salger, who is the Alumni Engagement Manager at GDB, as well as Lynn Dubinsky, who is our new VP of Client Engagement and Impact. Welcome, Amy and Lynn. We're really excited to get the conversation started with you guys this evening, and for people to get to know you a little bit better in your roles at GDB. So if we can kind of start with your backstory in terms of like your education work and your experience and history, let's kind of start there, kind of what led you to GDB.
Sounds great. Thanks, Lee.
Yeah.
Would you like to go first?
Sure, I can go first. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Lee. Hi, everyone. This is Lynn. So I think I'm probably in a big club to say that working in this field was not a linear path. Many people I've talked to, it's kind of a circuitous journey here, but I will tell you that I am just off of a 21-year stint at Braille Institute of America in Southern California, and I'm working there. I left as the regional director of the Los Angeles Center. It's a Southern California organization. I know many people may have heard of Braille Institute, and some people certainly have not. And before that, I worked for 14 years as the educational programs manager, mostly at our Santa Barbara Center. And I'll come back to my work at Braille Institute, but before that, I was a college instructor on the East Coast, excuse me, a little tongue-tied, in Boston, where I taught mostly literature classes and some kind of related to art history and film history. And when I moved back to California, I was done with teaching, and I was already in my, how old was I? Mid-30s. And I thought I done with teaching, I think I'll be a freelance editor. And I realized shortly after that I really was craving meaningful work, and my love for literature drew me to Braille Institute. I thought I'll work in the library. There was an opening, and the person at that time who was hiring said, I'd really like to see you teach adaptive cooking. I mean, apropos of almost nothing other than perhaps she knew by looking at me my love of food, and maybe I just, and so and I just, long story short, I ended up in that position, and from there then learned to teach independent living skills, adaptive cooking, led a book club for many years through Braille Institute's connection with NLS, and again, kind of anything related to the domestic sphere, and I loved it. And I very much had kind of that paraprofessional experience and learned, and at that time, if one wanted to work with mostly adult visually impaired clients, it was mostly paraprofessional. I looked into going to graduate school, and if you wanted to work with children, you could pursue a degree. And I know things have changed in that field. I will say that my mom, for most of her career, was a teacher counselor for the blind and visually impaired through Department of Rehabilitation. So it wasn't as if it wasn't familiar to me at all. Literally, her trunk, you would open her trunk, and it reminded me of Mary Poppins. It's like wonders. It was like a carpet bag, and it was full of white canes and cane tips and bump dots and you name it, like all, and writing guides. And so she loved her work, and that translated to me that desire to do that work, and it was engaging and interesting. And so eventually I moved to Los Angeles, and I'm sorry, I should say, I then segued to the educational manager's role and got to create programs and classes. And Santa Barbara, probably not a big surprise, like most of California, we had many clients who were Spanish speakers, and I was given the opportunity to also develop programs led in Spanish, and to be able to be creative with that programming and create community partners. Many people were struggling to manage their diabetes and diabetic retinopathy. So really being able to create, for lack of another word, kind of wellness programs and, adaptive cooking for people with diabetes. Sure. And the other thing that was so wonderful about the opportunity there is we also got to create a program for psychosocial support. So being able to have counselors on staff, to have peer-led support groups, one-on-one counseling that was, adjustment to vision loss, family support. And that was also very meaningful. It was very clear that need was there. Segue a few years later, I got married and I moved to Los Angeles where my husband was working. And I thought, okay, I've done this work. I'm going to go study gerontology. I realized when I was working with at Braille Institute, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm giving the dance mix version. I'll speed it up, forgive me, but I will. So I fell in love with working with seniors and I wanted to go study gerontology, but my job was available at Braille Institute to run educational programs. And I thought, well, maybe I'll do that for a time being and get my feet under me, have an income. And then again, I fell in love with it. I realized I want to be here. I want to do this work. And working with that population felt different than Santa Barbara. And I got to do both. I got to bring in my love of creating programs and working with population of seniors who are visually impaired, adjusting to vision loss. And then during the pandemic, everyone's probably so sick of the word pivot, like so sick of it, but we too had to pivot. And I was put into the position of being the director of the Los Angeles Center and figuring out how to work with that team to meet the most immediate needs of our clients. So really a lot of that was reaching out to clients and making sure that we were a bridge. And then I'm speaking to, I know, an audience who can relate to this entirely, but again, it's such a visual medium. Suddenly we were switching over to we used Teams and not Zoom. And so how do we do that? How do we make that a user-friendly experience and get people on board? And we moved at a glacial pace until the pandemic. And suddenly all those things that we had talked about, we suddenly needed to create. So then working with that team over from the time the pandemic, literally almost from the time we shut down in March until I started here 2 months ago. I had a few weeks off to move from Southern California. And then at GDB. And what I will say is that all of the years I worked at Braille Institute, every year, every 2 years, I would look at the Guide Dogs for the Blind website. I will tell everyone that I was one of those kids growing up. If you asked me what I was going to be, I wanted to be a veterinarian. Like that was my heart's desire. I loved dogs from the moment I was born, like gleefully. My mom would say like my legs would kick. I'd be like in the high chair and I'd see a dog, our dog, and go crazy. But for all sorts of reasons, I didn't end up in the hard sciences, and I didn't take that path. But most of my summer jobs, it was, assisting at veterinary offices. I did a strange brief stint taking care of a small zoo in Israel. I then did all the diets for the Santa Barbara Zoo, always trying to keep my hand on animals, literally on them, not just, research would be good, but I wanted to touch them all. And then did wildlife rehab for volunteer work. So my passion for animals, especially the relationship with dogs, always, again, had me looking at GDB. And then also our clients, probably not a big surprise, very few of them were guide dog users, but I would see the clients at Braille Institute, the ones who had dogs, and again, I don't want to romanticize, but the way that they seemed to thrive was very different than many of our clients who didn't have dogs. And so again, I would look at the website and finally this job was there. And I thought, now's the time. Like I wanted to work here for such a long time, and it married so many of my passions, my knowledge, my skills. And when I read that job description, so threw my hat in the ring. And that is my long-winded way of telling you how I got here into this seat today.
And it sounds like, based on what you said, if we can't find you in your office, we need to check over the vet scenario.
Oh my God, no. Sometimes like I just have to get a dose of the dogs. I'll go stare in the windows, like at the dogs.
At the puppy center, yes. Excellent. So now, before I give my history, you mentioned something that, and I got to give a little bit of background. You talked about Braille and Spanish speaking clients that you worked with.
Mhm.
So when I was in high school and taking Spanish, a friend and I asked our Spanish teacher if sign language was different between English and Spanish, aside from, maybe some of those words that were
Mhm.
obviously different. And there actually was quite a bit of difference. And no surprise to anyone who knows me, the only thing I remember in Spanish sign language is how to ask for chocolate. But I'm curious, so with Braille, was there a difference or no?
That's a good question. One of the challenges, at least at Braille Institute, was that, and not just for our Spanish speakers, is that there were also just literacy issues,
Sure.
for our native English speakers and Spanish speakers. So first we had to also just help people with some literacy issues.
Sure.
And so when we were teaching, and again, it sounds like a bit of a misnomer, even though I worked at Braille Institute for such a long time.
Mhm.
I am not, I know the code, jumbo Braille, like I can see
Sure.
some of it, but I can't tell you enough but we would have Braille classes and the Braille code taught in Spanish for native Spanish speakers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. All right. Well, hey everyone, this is Amy Sauger, and similar to Lynn, I will admit that I was 13 when I lost my vision, and aside from living with the visual impairment, this was not my realm of career. And I should mention, Marsala, my first guide, female black lab, is curled up on a pillow back in the corner, perfectly content sleeping through this meeting. But I actually went to college and got 2 undergraduate degrees in elementary education and psychology. When I went to college, I had every intention of teaching. And as I was in college, I fell absolutely in love with psychology and decided to continue on in that path. And so got my master's degree in clinical psychology. For those of you who don't know, I'm an Iowa native, so the colleges and universities I went to were in Iowa. And then for the basically for the most part, the last 16 years of the last 20 years, I actually have been working in the field of substance abuse as a counselor. There was a little bit in there where I was a counselor at a school as well, but for the most part, that was where I was. But where I got connected with GDB was through the Alumni Association Board. I was finishing up my 6th year this year, and when Teresa retired, I kind of had looked into a couple of things, but through my involvement with the board, it actually led to this position of how can we bring the alumni voice into GDB. And so when I was offered the position, I decided to take it. It was great. I was going to be able to continue doing some of the things we've been doing with the board and continue on some new paths along with that. So I had a complete career change when I started at GDB back in August, which has been a very positive decision by all means. So that's it.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yep, that's how I ended up at GDB, was actually through the alumni board.
I was going to say, Amy, that's a great segue actually to our next question, which is, what is your position at GDB and what does it involve? Like, what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So the alumni engagement manager position is a new position here at GDB. We've all heard when Teresa retired, GDB relooked at how can we better serve clients. And one of the things that they really, for any of us who've been involved with GDB, we know that they've always wanted to hear feedback and how can we do things. And obviously, in an effort to really continue with that, was how do we get the feedback other than, hey, we're going to implement this and then tell us what you think, but really bringing that back into more of the that strategic development portion. So one of the things that I do is I do the part of the Alumni Association that Teresa used to do. So work with the chapters. For any of you who are alumni, whether you're a K9 Buddy program, you're an OMI alumni, you're a handler alumni, being that point of contact for anyone, obviously calling the support center, by all means, they know where to route if it needs to be routed to me or not, or if it's something totally different. But it's just kind of that connection, and then working with different departments and things as well as to how can we get alumni involved? How can we hear from alumni of, this is something that may be needed, or did you think about this? Or, and just really kind of getting it back into some of those initial portions and going from there. My day-to-day involves a variety of things, a lot of interactions with alumni, usually probably through email mostly, but some home calls and things too. And then working with other staff here at GDB of, hey, we really think alumni need to be involved with this. How can we do that? Where do we think we might be missing something or not? And, it's a great way when alumni have questions, then they can reach out, and I'm more than happy to help. And if I don't have the answer, because I don't always have the answer, get you guys connected to who you need to. And, Lynn and I obviously get to work very closely together with that. And she's got a little bit more, aside from just working on the alumni, that
It's a list.
right. So I'll let you to talk about all of the other realms that you have in addition to working with all of us alumni.
Yes. So thank you. Hi, it's Lynn. So I have a list in front of me so that I don't forget any of the things that are kind of under my title. And so will be and am overseeing Guide Dog for the Blind's Client Engagement and Experience Division. And so this includes members of the support center, admissions and residential program teams, psychosocial support, youth services, outreach and advocacy teams, as well as alumni engagement manager. And so the client engagement and impact division is new to Guide Dogs for the Blind, and it was created essentially to ensure that the client voice is heard and incorporated into everything we do. And you will hear that, like, if you leave today with anything, it would be to know that piece of it, again, hearing the voice of clients and how can we be more responsive and have that inform things that are going on at Guide Dogs for the Blind. So those are the areas that are under me.
And with that, Lynn, it's I kind of made reference to this, but also that aspect of really recognizing that we not only as clients but as alumni encompasses beyond guide dog handlers. It's our canine buddy alumni, it's our OMI alumni, and really also trying to get that voice from all of those different aspects to make sure that the programs are all being heard from the clients.
Thank you for saying that. And again, also getting their voice, informing what we're doing, but also engaged in alumni activities so that they also are fully part of the alumni body.
Yep. And I think you and I both, we've had multiple discussions with things, with our meetings where we start talking about one thing and we realize, oh, this carries over into this group or that group. And, oh, what about this? And how do we do that? And, with us both being, and not just a matter of us being, but, all of the other changes and things is that, we don't completely know what that looks like, 3 months from now. We've had some opportunities to bring in that client voice, like with the Oregon focus groups, and we've had the opportunity, with some of those things to reach out to alumni of, hey, would you like to help with this or that in regards to presentations? I know I've had the opportunity to do that as well, but we just know some of those things develop as new things come up as GDB too, and so we can't always say, hey, this is exactly what that's going to be, but definitely trying to bring that in.
Yes, it's a good point. It feels like this filter through which right now, when things are coming up, that is the filter. Like, is this an opportunity to bring in the client voice? So kind of holding that against things that come up.
Right. And best how to do that too, which sometimes that can vary depending on what topic or context we're talking about there and things. So yeah, so there's
so I know you've already touched on this a little bit, but maybe we'll start with Lynn here. Both of your jobs came about with some of the organizational restructuring that was happening at GDB. Lynn, will you and then Amy share what this looks like kind of from the inside? And I know you've already touched on some of that, but maybe what that looks like, something that you haven't touched on yet.
Sure. So hi, it's Lynn. So one thing I have to say, and this is not an excuse, but I need everyone to remember, this is the only structure I know. Like I don't have the long history. So the way that the restructuring is worked, like it is new to me. I don't have that institutional knowledge to compare it to the ways things used to be. That said, what I'm understanding, and certainly, the meetings I've been in, the conversations we've had and other conversations, is that the restructure is ultimately to make us more nimble. It is to make us be able to be more responsive as needs come up, and to be able to, even though, like, one of the things I will say coming here, everyone told me, whether it was in job interviews or when I started, the level of complexity at Guide Dogs for the Blind. And I thought, how complex can it be? Oh my goodness, it's so complex. There's so many things that are in motion. And again, I know it's this way in many organizations, but literally, I mean, you pull one thread here and the way that it reverberates, in another area.
We need a different analogy other than onion layers.
Indeed.
Because that, yes,
We'll
use
weaving.
Weaving, okay, there we go.
The warp
yes.
and the weft of it. So just, again, how do we communicate, across departments? And some of this restructure, again, is so that there is not redundancy and it makes us more efficient. And again, like I said, more responsive. So I know that is certainly a big part of this restructure. And as Amy said, some of these things will make more sense as things emerge, but I know that there was so much intentionality and a great deal of thought that was given to this structure. Again, one thing I've learned about the organization, even in just these 2 short months, is the level of intentionality and thoughtfulness and intelligence that goes into those decisions, and none of them are done cavalierly. So some of it is, again, it is building an infrastructure, and I'll use the word again, to make us more nimble and more responsive to client needs. And so that is my understanding of that restructuring. Amy, am I missing something?
And no, actually, but as you were talking, I was moving away from the weaving analogy and going to a cooking analogy with how much you like to cook. And I know I like to bake. And so, that idea, if you change one ingredient, it affects the overall whole. But along the way of finding that perfect dish, you're going to find other things that are going to work out great, and some that may not too. I've definitely had some of those, but with that interaction, like you were talking about, I think that one of the things is there's been many things where I start a conversation with someone, or we're talking about one thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, we should really loop in this person from this area and this person from this area. And that interaction, because they've always interacted that way, I think maybe we just, and again, I'm like you, I didn't come in until after the restructuring. So aside from working with Teresa with the board, I don't know what that all looked like beforehand either. But it definitely, the advantage is we're making sure that all of us are on the same page and moving forward. And we're not compartmentalized to where, I mean, there's been plenty of times where someone's like, oh, we should bring in so-and-so. And I went, yeah, that's probably a good idea. But in my mind, I hadn't even thought about how that would connect. And, I think there was always that assumption too. I noticed this when I started, and I was talking with another coworker, and sometimes they'd ask, okay, well, what do you do? And I said, oh, I took over the alumni portion of Teresa's job. And even some staff are like, okay, but what does that actually entail?
Yeah.
Just because they just, didn't necessarily, their compartment was different. And so they maybe had a little bit of information with it, but not necessarily as much. And so now it's getting that interaction and being able to try to move forward. And ultimately the goal is continuing to serve alumni and clients in a much better, holistic, responsive way. And see what that definitely goes to. And there could be some bumps along the way as we figure those things out, but that's where some of that feedback from everybody who's listening, whether now or when this gets recorded and put out there, is that idea too, that we need the feedback too of things. And I've had a few people reach out with various things of, hey, this didn't work, or say an email, or hey, we're missing this for this piece of that. And without someone reaching out Obviously in an appropriate way, but that idea of like, we don't necessarily know either. And people have great ideas. And so it's like, okay, obviously not meaning that everything will change exactly how people want, but looking at how can we better serve the population that's receiving, involvement in programs.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
I'm going to go ahead and skip through our next question because I think you guys have already answered it. Asking about, how you connect with alumni and what the structure looks like. And I feel like we've got a pretty good sense of that already. So, Lynn, yeah, go ahead.
Well, Lee, I'm sorry. One thing I did want to say that I did not mention, but apropos of that question, even though we covered it, I will say that one of the things that drew me, I spoke to what drew me to GDB, but to this position is the fact that there is an alumni association. Like that was of great interest to me. And working at, in an organization where clients remain clients for a long time. I would say, some of them came in, they got their needs met and off they went, but many people that stayed connected to Braille Institute. And I know for, different reasons, people remain connected to Guide Dogs for the Blind as their needs evolve. And obviously with, dogs retiring and that, but the fact that there's an alumni association to me was such a draw, and really especially thinking about the pandemic, just kind of this epidemic of loneliness and how hard it is to form community. And the fact is that there is a built-in community, whether somebody wants to engage or not, it's up to them. It's not like, you have to, but there are people who want to be connected and want to share their experience and want to support one another or explore interests. And that there is this structure in place for that is just, I don't want to be sentimental, but I feel deeply moved by that. I really do. And that is just it is harder and harder to form connection. And one of the kind of silver linings of the pandemic is the fact that we can connect remotely as we are now. It's opened up those possibilities and real connections form. And so I just think the possibilities of engaging our alumni in all three programs really lights me up. I think it's really exciting, and working together with Amy and with the alumni board, that there's so much possibility to grow that and do that, especially even thinking about how it will serve advocacy, some of those issues, just to be able to come together around things that are needed as a group. Anyway, I just wanted to say that about the alumni.
That's a very good point. Anyone, and I shouldn't say anyone, but several people typically know, I mean, may or may not, I guess I should say, be aware of the fact that really GDB was the first guide dog school that has an alumni association. And I believe that CNI maybe is starting one, but I will admit too that when I was looking and things, it definitely was a draw as a client that there was that opportunity. Now I did not have an opportunity to become involved with a chapter prior to starting on the board, but it is a huge opportunity for people to get connected with other individuals, whether it be canine buddies, or it be the OMIs, or it be the handlers. It's just that opportunity of recognizing all of those similarities and how can we support one another.
And share resources, right? I mean, it's
Absolutely.
just such a changing landscape, just thinking about accessible technology and just, you name it. I mean, there's so many things that are happening, and to be able to connect with people who may have their finger on the pulse of something that someone else may not, or whether it's supporting people through changes even in their own adjustment, as their relationship with their guide dog evolves, to be able to turn to one another, even though the support services are at GDB, having peers to also talk to about things. So anyway, I just wanted to.
Yeah, how is that stuff working? I know me personally, again, for those of you who know me, no surprise that, I let everybody else work out, play with the new technology, accessible stuff that's out there. And then when they figure out the quirks, and then okay, then I'll come in and try it. But
Then tell me.
Exactly. Let me know which one to get. But
that is so true. I mean, it was a huge draw for me as a client as well. And then, as somebody that doesn't travel a lot either, it was a way to be able to connect with people all across the US and Canada, and, meet people that I wouldn't have met otherwise, and share those experiences together. So, the Alumni Association is really a great part of
Well, and Lee, and forgive me if I have the order chronologically incorrect here, but your involvement as an alumni then on the board also is what helped connect you to
But
health research.
how might alumni support you as you settle into your new positions?
This is Amy, and I guess the two things that I would say with that as to how to support us. One, share with us your thoughts, your feedback. Maybe I have three things. Definitely, like I said, even as an alumni, there are things that when I see something or get something that I have a different perception than others. And, so then someone else could look at it and be like, okay, maybe not, or maybe yes, or what about this? And so sharing those feedbacks and it's not even just feedback, but thoughts, concerns, or, hey, have you ever thought about this? Or, type of a thing. So, sharing your thoughts and things with us is helpful. With that support though as well, and with those sharing of thoughts and ideas, the other part that comes that supportive is recognizing that it doesn't mean that something that was, suggesting things, it doesn't mean that's going to automatically happen by all means, for various reasons. We can look at something and be like, oh yeah, okay, this may or may not work, type stuff. But I think the other biggest thing is patience. Lynn, you and I both, there's been multiple times we started discussions and it's like, okay, neither spark quite for sure. And having that patience of recognizing, you may not have an answer right away, but it doesn't mean that we just aren't, looking into it or recognizing it. But it's going to take some time too, for not even just because we're both new, but just, change. Sometimes change seems like it's fast, but it really isn't. And with that connection.
Well, and it's like that weaving structure you were talking about before. If you change something, how many other things does it also affect, right?
Yes. I don't think I've come across anything yet that if you change one thing, it doesn't change multiple things. And, that's that piece that, we don't necessarily know until we start looking into it and start talking about it. And that is definitely huge. So Lynn, I would say is kind of like how I feel alumni can be supportive in things. I've had some great conversations with alumni who have reached out with questions about, hey, what about this? And, what they were requesting was not possible, but it had a great discussion about it. What other ways, and I'm an alumni as well. So what other ways could we support you with your role?
Oh, that is a good question. I mean, again, I know we mentioned the client voice, and I know that those are kind of the robust discussions we're having, like where are those opportunities to be able to hear that, to hear that voice, and then be able to, act on those areas where it makes the most sense. So I think, again, like I said, I've been here 2 months. It will continue to evolve. I'm just still wrapping my arms and mind around the organization and the role. So I will get back to you on that.
That's fair enough. I think that's completely fair. And again, some of that might depend on what the context is of what we're talking about too. There could be certain situations where that support might be something else of reaching out to the alumni and, hey,
well, I'm sorry. One thing that occurs to me is that I know that there will be I'm looking for a survey that will be happening soon. And I know the alumni board is working on a survey. So again, a great opportunity to really figure out what those questions are that we want to ask alumni so that we're, generating information that will be helpful. So I know that once that survey, is complete, that will certainly help. So again, more opportunities to ask people direct questions.
And by soon, let me just reinforce that that's not like in a week or 2 weeks or even within the next couple of months. It's a very relative. So don't feel like if you don't get an email, you need to reach out and say, hey, I didn't get the survey. Soon is not within
6 p.m. tonight.
Right.
Or 6 p.m. West Coast time.
Right, exactly. So now, Lynn, obviously I know as we're both learning it, when you're onboarding and things, there's lots of busyness, lots of those type of things. And you and I earlier were talking about, enjoyment of cooking. And I didn't get a chance to ask you though, do you have a certain type of food that you prefer to cook?
Yes, so I am a vegetarian, so vegetarian dishes.
Okay.
I tend to like to make things that that have many steps and lots of spices and create the largest mess possible in our kitchen. That would be my preference, is to just have like turmeric splattered everywhere. If I don't do that, then I haven't
Okay.
done my
Now I
job.
make messes everywhere, but that's not my intention. It just happens.
No, I like to pretend that that was intentional.
Okay,
but
all right, fair enough.
yeah. So I know, again, I'm in a large club. I love feeding the people I love, and I love making cocktails or pouring wine, just creating an atmosphere that's hopefully as convivial as can be. And also just all those years of not being able to be in close proximity to people, making up for that. And
Sure.
I do like to feed people, and just again having that space to connect with people, especially if it's breaking bread together, is something I really enjoy. But moving up to the Bay Area from Los Angeles, I really happy. My stepson lives in Oakland and he's engaged, and so that, having a little bit of community, but it's all new to me, so I don't have that many people to shake a cocktail for yet, but it will evolve.
Sure.
Lee, you had a question for us, I think.
Yeah, you talked a little bit about this as we first started chatting this evening about your love of dogs, Lynn. Even as an infant, I guess.
Yes.
What is your connection with dogs now, and kind of throughout your life? And are there any favorite kind of dog moments that you want to share?
Sure. Thank you for asking. I will just say, landing here and just seeing dogs everywhere has just been like unbelievable. Just looking out the window here and just seeing them on people's offices. I have an empty dog bed in my office in a tie down, and people ask me, "Are you going to bring your dog?" And I will say, my dog, Lucy. She is a Cocker Spaniel who we adopted about a year and a half ago from the animal shelter in Los Angeles, who our vet things had been used for breeding and then just let out into the street. So skin and bones. And she is now not skin and bones, and a delight, a absolute delight. But I will share, early in the pandemic, I learned this expression actually when I came for my interview, where Kristen had shared, she showed me a photo and she said, "This is my soul dog." And I'd never heard that before, but the second she said it couldn't have resonated more. So I had an Australian Shepherd for 14 years, and she was that for me. And so she died of a very fast moving cancer early in the pandemic. And so for the 2.5 years, I didn't have a dog, and it was way too long. It was just life as I see it emblazoned on GDB shirts is better with a dog. It is absolutely better with a dog. And I felt like, there are people who desperately want babies, and they're like, looking in carriages and they want to see that. And I was one of those people, especially when I didn't have a dog. Like if a dog walked by, I was like, "Oh my God, can I pet your dog? Can I pet your dog?" So I would just say life is just fuller and richer. And I never tire of engaging with dogs. It's not as if like, "Oh, yeah, I've seen that, been there, done that."
Sure.
They interest me, and I have many books on dogs in my bookshelves. And being here, there's so much to know and so much to learn, and about the relationship between people and their guide dogs. And it's just, I try not to anthropomorphize. I try to avoid all of that, but I'm again just deeply moved by that connection that I see between people and dogs, and especially people and their guide dogs, and that partnership. So,
well, and with that, like that's one of the populations, if you will, of our alumni that is served within the Canine Buddy program.
Yes.
Because are individuals who have been guide dog handlers for years, but because of life circumstances, changes, all of that, they no longer may work with the guide as they did before, but still are able to have that companionship then that comes from having a canine buddy and things, which is huge, because when you do go for several years and then to not have that, that's a pretty big change. It's
profound.
And, for anyone, will be happy to know that as an adult, Lynn has learned to control her kicking when she sees dogs. So I'm not being kicked underneath the desk or anything. So we're good there.
Although I keep turning over my shoulder to look at Marcella and just kind of like moon. And how about you, your relationship with dogs?
Oh, growing up, we always had dogs. And a variety of dogs, labs. I mean, I've always been a little bit more partial to labs because that is what we had growing up. We had a couple other breeds. My brother was notorious for wanting new puppies, and he loved the puppy stage, but he didn't necessarily like the work that went along with it, and sometimes would lose his not his enjoyment with it, but it wasn't as close once it got a little bit bigger. So as a result of that, at one point we had a Rottweiler and a Siberian Husky as well, and then my mom did put a kibosh to no more new puppies type of thing, even if he purchased the pup himself. So my vision was one that is more of a slower progression. So year to year, I don't necessarily have big changes. Sometimes I do, but for the most part, I don't. But when I look over what I could see back when I was a teenager or in college, 10 years ago, whatever that might be, is quite a bit different. And so there was a period of time in the early, like somewhere between 2010 and 2015 or 2014, somewhere around in there. There was a pretty significant change with my vision to where it became more likely for me to miss curves, miss steps, run into things, those type of stuff. And that was kind of then where the discussion started in terms of getting a guide dog. And I will say that Marcella, as an adult, Marcella is the only dog I have had. Now in my household, there is some discussion as to whose dog she actually is, because my two teenagers seem to think that she belongs to one of them.
What does she think?
Depends on the moment. She loves sleeping in my youngest son's bed. And so, yes, I gave my dog permission to get on furniture. So she definitely, that's where she likes to be, at night things, but she is so funny. I have Life 360 with my kids, and if they've been gone for a little while, overnight or whatever, once she hears that Life 360 noise and it will announce, Gavin is home or Reagan is home, she pops up and will go and sit and just stare at the door and wait. I have a wood flooring in my kitchen, so she sits on the edge of the carpet of the living room, and her tail is just sitting there wagging. And as soon as they open that door, she bolts towards them, and it's super cute and sweet. So, but yeah, now if Gavin has popcorn, then definitely he's her favorite at the moment. So, but yeah. So she has a strong bond with all of us, but if all three of us come home about the same time, she tends to still navigate more towards me. So yes. But
I don't think I finished this thought, but I was mentioning the empty dog bed here.
Oh, yes.
My dog Lucy, who we adopted, she will not be on that bed. I will just say that she was not socialized. Her early life did not lend itself to her being here, and also I think my husband is very happy to have her at his feet when he's working.
So that just means you need a second dog. Once Lucy would be able to acclimate to having a second dog.
That is such a good idea.
Yes.
I'm going to bring that home. That idea.
Your husband is going to say, I'm no longer allowed. You cannot come visit. Very good. Yes. I saw.
Amy, sounds like Leslie. It sounds like Marcella and Aviva, my guide. They have they're both small petite black labs. They both have similar personalities, it sounds like. And in fact, Lynn, when we were at the last alumni retreat, they took our dogs out to the play yard and gave me back Marcella.
Something's not right here.
Right.
To figure out we had the wrong dog.
Yeah,
so
thankfully for a tag silencer, Lee was like, "What is this on my dog's collar?" Yes, gotta love that.
Lynn, when you're not, it's great to get to know both of you a little bit more personally, for our community too, to just see you're not just just work all the time and like get to know it's like a whole person. So when you're not working at GDB, what do you enjoy doing? I know you enjoy cooking for sure and making a mess in the kitchen.
So I really, I'm going to say I enjoy hiking, and I have to tell you, Lee, I think I enjoy hiking in theory, because in all honesty, I'm thinking, okay, I've been here 2 months and I can count like on less than one hand. I'm holding up, I think, 2 fingers, like how many hikes, and there's nothing but hikes here. So I have to really question if that's really true. I like the idea of hiking very, very much. But there's so many beautiful places to explore. I am, I'm a perambulator. I'll use that. I like to walk. I love walking, and I realize maybe it's not on trails as much as I used to. And just exploring. I know that when I moved to Boston, one of my favorite things would just be to get on the subway and just get off at any random spot and just explore a place. And having moved to this area, it's same thing, but now in a car and just exploring the area. So I think that's how I approach travel. And that brings me a lot of joy. And I really like to be in the natural world. I'm definitely a reader. And I like reading about the natural world. And so those are some of the things that bring me joy. And honestly, with work being as intense as it is, it's such a gift to have a weekend that is not structured and have it unfold and just be open to the way that it unfolds. Sure. Save for, laundry, so. Yeah.
So household chores does not make the list of things you like to do.
I need to approach it with a more find the joy in that.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I just like cleaning so much that whenever I clean my house, I'm reminding myself, thank you, Lord, for giving me a house to clean. And yes, because
gratitude helps.
Right. I repeat that a lot. You mentioned that you like. I'm sorry, Lee, go ahead.
Oh, I said, what about you, Amy?
Yeah, so I would say at the top of my list is attending my boys' activities. I've got a senior and a freshman in high school, and so we usually have some type of an activity going on. And I have found that with them being involved in activities, my level of competitiveness, which had always been there when I was younger, seems to be growing. So I'm a little concerned by the time my youngest is a senior, but I'll try to keep that in check. But definitely attending their activities. Outside of that, I do enjoy baking. I enjoy cooking as well, but Lynn and I were talking earlier, and I'm definitely a recipe kind of gal until I get the recipe down. But I really would be grateful if someone else wanted to come and do the cleanup. But otherwise I enjoy reading as well. Mine are probably more on the extremes of either a romance novel or a psychological thriller. Never together though. I don't like the love stories mixed in psychological thrillers. No. Okay. But those are that. I do enjoy watching, TV or movies, and otherwise just hanging out with family or friends, playing games, whatever that might be. I actually had a new game that I played this called Blank Slate. I highly recommend it for everybody. It's very easy. Lots of fun. Blank Slate. Yes.
Writing it down.
Yes. So yeah, that's really what I enjoy doing as well. And I found that I really enjoy some of those where I can go back and find some of those TV shows that used to be on that I liked, and then I can stop watching them when they started to veer off weird and things. So
the joys of streaming.
Exactly. Friends by far though is still my favorite TV show of all time. And when you were talking earlier, you mentioned the word pivot from the pandemic. For any friend lovers out there, all I could think of was the pivot episode with the couch. And actually I have a sweatshirt that says pivot.
Oh, okay.
Maybe this is true of what I'm about to ask, Amy. You can go with the pivot for this question.
Yes. Okay,
Do you have any favorite quotes or wisdom to live by?
I think one of the things, I don't know if it's an actual quote out there somewhere. If it is, I can't give credit to who said it, but I know something that I pretty regularly kind of go by, and it kind of came as really dealing with my vision, because as any of us who have any residual vision, You know, I'm guessing pretty similar to me in the sense of some days you can wake up and you can have a really bad day. You know, things that you could see the day before, it's like, huh, not so much today. Granted, there's always those times that we think we can see something that we can't, but with that, and with the fact of mine being progressive and not really knowing for sure how it could or couldn't change, one of the things I do kind of try to live by is the idea that we can't control what happens to us, because there are a lot of things out there that we can't control, but we can control how we react to it. And that's really probably the biggest thing I try to live by. And sometimes, you know, it helps keep me recognized too of not just reacting, but you know, I have that choice of how I do react to this, and regardless of what it is. And you know, I think that's true with finding enjoyment in activities as well. You know, we're choosing to find enjoyment with those. But how about you, Lynn? Do you have any words of wisdom?
Well, I don't know if I have any words of wisdom, but I have a quote of wisdom.
Okay.
So I used to have this above my desk at my last job, and I think I'll put this up here. And it's a quote by the writer Anais Nin. It says, "And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom." And for me, I think wanting to make sure that it's important to me to feel like I am continuing to grow and to be able to take risks, and that it's okay to be uncomfortable, that it's you know, moving away from a job in an organization after 21 years that I dearly loved felt like a big risk, and going toward a place again that felt very much in alignment with what I want to be doing. But it is easy. Again, being comfortable, it's a nice feeling, but it also, how to tease apart being comfortable and feeling stagnant. And sometimes it's hard. I can find it hard to sometimes kind of know the difference. So for me, having that as a reminder that about growth and change. So that's an important quote for me.
I was actually going to say that, you know, it seemed like initially it talked about the growth aspect, but really that underlying aspect with it is change. And I mean, we as human nature, our nature, we don't like change to begin with. And I won't speak for all alumni by any means, but I know for me personally, with a vision difficulty, the reality is change is even more undesirable sometimes, you know, because you have that way of how things work, and then so it's like, oh, we'll try something new. And obviously trying new things ends up working out great. You know, sometimes we learn better from our mistakes as well, but being okay with recognizing that change doesn't always mean a bad thing either. And, you know, I can imagine what it was like for you after 21 years. I left my job after 13 to take the alumni engagement, and that was, it was definitely a lot of contemplation in doing so.
Oh, I realized that I was like, what's happening with my phone? I was on mute, so that doesn't work.
Yes.
So really kind of the last question before we wrap it up is, how might alumni reach you and regarding kind of what topics?
Well, I think we kind of touched base earlier on, you know, the topics. Feel free to reach out. You know, obviously, if it's still, don't let reaching out to us replace where you're going to contact the support center. You know, and if it is us that's where that needs to go, they'll make sure that it gets to us. But, you know, like I said earlier, let us know, you know, if something, hey, you know, this came out and this isn't working, or I have a question about this. Email is great. You know, one of the things that for those of you who don't know, I do work part-time. And with the time zone change, I'm in Iowa. So, you know, my hours might be a little bit different than like, say, GDB hours per se. You know, but I will get back to you as soon as I can. And of course, we've got voicemail. You know, so please feel free to reach out by phone, by email are usually the best ways. You know, if we are having trouble connecting by phone, sometimes, you know, it might end up being following up with an email, but those are definitely the two best ways to try to get a hold of me, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And sometimes that's right away, and sometimes it may not be until a couple days later, depending on what's going on and those type of things.
I know this is somewhat, hi, it's Lynn, somewhat different than what you're asking, Lee, but I did want to mention that there will be a town hall either in February or March to talk about wait time for guide dogs, and also the field service manager restructure. So there'll be more opportunities also for people to join the town hall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that is a really important way to reach out and to get your information, from GDB clients as well. Finally, any thoughts that you would like to share before we turn it over to Deb for hopefully some questions? We're
Not that I can think of at the moment, but we'll see if I think of something that a question spurs or whatever.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm so genuinely glad to be here and to be part of this organization, and to better understand kind of my role, and again, to say it once again, but to look for those opportunities so that clients' needs are met. And I know it's an organization that really supports clients, and I love I've heard this quoted, I've heard Chris say it, I've heard other people say it, to meet people where they are at, and their holistic needs. And so just excited for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Well, we are really, really excited to have both of you as part of the new structuring of the GDB team, and excited about all of the things that are to come out of that collaboration. Deb, I want to turn it over to our wonderful moderator for
our tech guru
that you might have and be able to answer in the time that we have remaining.
So in the question box, we do have a question that with all this restructuring, is there a specific change that has or will quickly occur that you can give us an example of?
Nothing is coming to mind. I think that, Lynn and I were talking about this earlier with that, and the whole idea of the change really is to help things be better for clients. And with that is sometimes those inner workings might be changes on this side of things, but it's to also help clients not necessarily feel those changes, if that makes sense. Lynn, you mentioned a factory of, a product, for an analogy of, the idea is that end product and how do we make that better and improve, but how that gets there, those inner workings, may or may not be there. Yeah.
This is Lynn. Again, I think a lot of those changes are, again, they may be operational, they may be kind of workflow, and I know that GDB really cares a lot about transparency. So I believe there'll be a lot of transparency, whatever those changes are, but some of them might not be, like you're saying, one wouldn't notice it at the, client end, but again, it is to be more efficient. So I don't know, there's nothing that I'm aware of that's kind of in the works. Again, one of the biggest things I would say, and again, especially in our roles, is again the fact that we have the two, we have 3 programs, and I think for a long time, as I understand it, it really was the guide dog program. So again, I know that the OMI program is becoming more and more robust, and so again, how do we make sure that we are supporting that program, as well as Canine Buddies is continuing to evolve. So I think that those are kind of the most overt changes in bringing those up. So all 3 programs are, sharing the same ground.
Yep.
Kim.
Okay, am I muted now?
You're good.
Okay, Thank you so much for this. It was wonderful. I've been a GDB grad for over 30 years now. Hard to believe. Hard to believe that is, but so I've seen lots of changes. I live in Canada.
Mhm.
I had a couple of questions. One is, as I think about this model, I think about the times where we contact, say, I'll just use admissions as an example. Um, when you contact admissions and you're doing a retrain application, and
Mhm.
you can be very emotional, like when you're doing that phone interview. And in a way, it would really help to have it be a grad who did that phone interview with you. To
Mhm.
me, like just thinking of that emotional part and I'm not saying other people can't empathize, but again, if you're applying for Canine Buddy, would there be a chance that those people that did that initial application with you could be a Canine Buddy graduate or an OMI graduate or in my case, a guide dog graduate, just would make me feel more comfortable. But I had a quick question for Lynn, and that is, do you get to go to guide dog class, or are you at all doing that class experience with the various programs?
Yes, thanks for asking, Kim. A lot of my onboarding has been experiential, so I was able to go out into the field and observe training. I've also been, it's been so thoughtful and intentional, the onboarding, and I've been over to the veterinary area, over to the breeding area, basically all of the different areas, and also even went up to the Oregon campus to meet the team there. So again, I don't have that lived experience of using a guide dog, but really trying to just be in a learning, not trying, being in a learning posture and trying to understand what's going on and to be able to hear what clients say and observe that. So I know that I will be sitting in on more of those classes than I have.
And this is Amy and Kim. Thank you for what you shared and things. And you also brought a good point, which when Lynn was talking about all of the different kind of departments, so to speak, that you oversee, one of them that came up, and this might be a good time to just remind individuals that there are a lot of emotions with whether you're talking about retiring a guide or reapplying or even making that decision to apply for guide school. And there's a lot of emotions. I know, having the opportunity to talk to some individuals who have completed the OMI program, all of those things that Jason Dorsch is an excellent resource for all alumni to contact. And he's our psychosocial emotional support. I don't remember exactly what his full term, what his full title is, but the support center can definitely help connect you as well with him. And so that is a great opportunity to reach out if anyone is feeling that it would be beneficial to talk to someone who has not just the background in education, but he is also an alumni as well.
Yeah.
So
definitely supporting those transitions and adjusting to that loss and just different phases of that relationship.
Yep.
I have just one more question that we'll take, and that was actually in the chat and asking about what Guide Dogs is doing about the constant issue of Uber and other rideshare driving denials for guide dog users.
So it's Lynn. So one of the areas, as I mentioned, that I am helping support is with the advocacy team. Rabia Dow is the director of advocacy, and even in the short 2 months I have been here, I know that he is really working on how does GDB play a role in influencing public policy around this issue. So it is of all of the advocacy issues, that is the top of the list. And so I know that that is something that we are going to be putting time and energy and resources toward. And also, how do we, across different guide dog schools, since all of the clients in this world are struggling with the same thing, how do we come together as a coalition and have a larger voice in this? So that is one of the things that I know that we will be working on, is again coming together to fight this good fight. So that's what I know. It's a big part of the rest of this fiscal year and certainly into the next.
Okay. What happened to my people? Sorry. But yeah, I have a new computer today.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
And this is my first Zoom meeting on this
You're
PC.
doing awesome. I wouldn't
And
even.
we don't have any additional questions, which
Oh.
probably makes sense because we're
Yeah.
just past 5 o'clock.
Yeah. Well, this is Lee. I really want to appreciate and thank Deb, you for moderating. That's not an easy task. And to Lynn and to Amy for joining us today for this speaker series. And I think it's really helpful for our clients, for the GDB clients, to really get to know you, your new roles, and also just kind of who you are as people. So to get that familiarity and be able to reach out. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank
Lots
you
of
so much.
enthusiastic thank yous in the chat. So
Oh, wonderful.
people
Well, thank
have
you everybody
enjoyed.
for joining. I know that you took time out of your busy days and things too. So we appreciate that. And please do feel free to contact us. So,
Mhm.
Thank you.
all right.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Have a great
Bye.
evening.
Bye.
Bye.